Alright, so we already finished Unit 7, so now we're starting Unit 8. Unit 8 is going to be what happens after the Civil War. This time era is usually known as the Reconstruction era, which took place from 1865 to 1877. So that's what Reconstruction is. Once again, it makes sense, Reconstruction, because they're going to reconstruct the South because the North destroyed the South during the Civil War. We also will be going over the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, but I'm more likely going to go over that with you tomorrow, so don't worry too much about that. I'll show you a slide which the key points of my lesson is for today on the next one. Give me a second. Alright, so I want to show you a little photo. I thought this was a fun little photo of Mr. Abraham Lincoln on the right side, and then I think it's one of his great grandsons on the left side. I just wanted to show you that, I mean, they look identical. So once again, that's from his future offsprings, from obviously his son that had kids and on and so forth. Like basically they're all gonna, that's kind of what it looks like. It's just crazy. This was a photo I took maybe like 10 years ago. So the resemblance is there between the two. So one of his great grandchildren and Abraham Lincoln. Anyways, moving on. All right, here we go. So the key points for the exit ticket today. So the first key point is we need to know exactly what Reconstruction era is and the year and why it's happening. So remember, Reconstruction era is what happens after the Civil War. The Union, the North, are going to reconstruct the South because they destroyed it during the Civil War. The next one, Radical Republicans. So Radical Republicans is super important. When you think of a radical, you think of someone that's really has extreme ideas, a little zafallo, a little crazy. So these Republicans have radical ideas, like they're the opposite of Abraham Lincoln. When you think of Abraham Lincoln, he is a Republican that cares for the South and the North. He's loving towards both sides, not only the North and the South, but I mean everybody. He treats everyone equally. The radical Republicans, they hate the South. They want to punish them. They can't stand them because they feel that they're the reasons why this war started. So whenever you think of radical Republicans compared to a Republican, think of Lincoln. A radical Republican, you think of someone that's like Lincoln but has hatred in him. And we already know that Abraham Lincoln is not like that. So once again, that's the big difference between a Republican and a radical Republicans. So once again, radical Republicans are Northerners that cannot stand the South, and they want to punish them after the Civil War. They want to make harsh laws towards them. They want them to not forgive them, so they can't forgive them. And you got to remember, Abraham Lincoln wants to forgive and forget. Radical Republicans do not want to forgive or forget. They can't stand the South. It reminds me of some people that I know, people that can't forgive and forget. The KKK is going to be the next key point. The Ku Klux Klan. These are going to be a terrorist group that's going to be made in the South, which I'll go more in details in a bit. I have my next slide. You'll see the definition of that. The Freedmen's Bureau. What I always want you guys to remember, when you see Freedmen's Bureau, there's like an ED in the middle of Freedmen's. I want you to always remember that ED can stand for an acronym, which is education. So the Freedmen's Bureau is an organization that the North brought to the South to give free education to African American people after the Civil War. Once again, I'll go more in details. It's kind of giving you a heads up that whenever you see Freedmen's Bureau, you always circle that ED because it stands for education. That's the acronym. Next one, who is the new president after Lincoln is assassinated? So we're going to need to know who that is. And then I put a little key point here. Watch the whole video, because you're going to have an exit ticket, and I'm actually going to have questions about myself in there and see if you guys get it right. For instance, I'll give you one question, an answer to one question is going to be in your exit ticket right now. So one of them will be, what is Delgado's favorite color? Delgado's favorite color is green. All right, so if you're listening to this video and you're doing what I'm telling you to do, you're going to get that question right on your exit ticket. So once again, Delgado's favorite color is green. All right, you have like 3 more of those questions, so you better listen throughout my lesson so you can get those right on the exit ticket. I'm doing this on purpose because many of you guys, I'm seeing the views on my YouTube video, and it's only like 30 of you or 40 of you all seeing my videos. So for that reason, I'm going to make these little questions in there so you guys can understand I need you to watch my videos. All right, moving on. So first vocabulary word, we have Reconstruction, time period of rebuilding after the Civil War. We went over that. Radical Republicans. Remember, political group that wanted to punish the South and give equal rights to freed slaves. So they genuinely care about these African Americans, but they just cannot stand the South white people. The Southern white people, they cannot stand them. So they hate the Confederates. They hate the soldiers that fought for the South. They want to punish the South forever because what they did to freed slaves. So many of the radical Republicans are abolitionists, but they're extreme abolitionists. Moving on, the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, a group of people who use extreme violence and threats to scare non-white people, usually African Americans. And as time goes on to like right now, modern time, that's still an organization that's still active in America. They hate all types of ethnicities, all right, except white people. All right, moving on. Freedmen's Bureau, a group of people that freed slaves. All right, that's why it says freedmen's, because they freed them in the South after the Civil War and provided free education. That's why I said the ED in freedmen's. You can always remember the ED is for education. So it provides free education to former slaves after the Civil War. Please remember that slaves, it was against the law to educate them. So these people are sent from the North to the South to help the former slaves or the freed slaves to learn how to read, write, and just basic skills, because they do not have that privilege back then. But now that they're freed after the Civil War, now they can be educated. All right, so these are the organization that's sent by Congress to the South to educate these former slaves. All right, so once again, we need more time. Rewind it, pause it, look over these vocabulary words. Is super, super important. But the next slide, I'm going to show you some illustrations and some photos of what it looks like. So this one right here, this is going to be the radical Republicans. So this guy will be a radical Republican. He's talking to Congress, telling them that they should punish the South. They should not forgive them. They should not be able to forget. He's doing the opposite of what Lincoln told them. But then again, this radical Republicans are going to emerge because Lincoln is assassinated like 5 days after the Civil War ends. And then these radical Republicans are going to emerge. So once again, I'm pretty sure if Lincoln was alive, he would not allow this to happen. But since he was obviously assassinated, he basically, there's no say-so. So these people that are in Congress, they want to punish the South, which is not what Lincoln wanted. In his second inaugural address, he says we need to forgive and forget. Our next one on the right side, this is the KKK. Story goes, all right, so the reason why they made this organization was because supposedly, I'm not sure how true this is, but supposedly African Americans were, raping, white women back then, or they were kidnapping or murdering people. So for that reason, these KKK make this organization to protect the white people, and they put these little masks on so they can protect their identities. But what happens is this, all right? Usually they would warn you, like if they see a black person walking with a white female, talking to them, they would warn them and tell them, like, you better stop talking to that girl, all right? You stay in your lane. Be with an African American woman, not a white woman. And they would warn them. If that person continues to talk to white people, then they would go to their house and they would burn a cross in front of their home to warn them. Now, that means, like, the next time they go to your house, they're no longer going to burn a cross. They're going to burn your house down. They're going to kill you. So that's kind of their tactics to intimidate you and scare you. So once again, this organization was made to, scare African Americans in the South, to make them understand that they are not equals to whites. They are lower to them, or they're not as equal. All right. So this is the organization was made for that. If I have enough time, I might tell you a little story that my professor told me when I was in college, but I just got to make sure I go through the main parts of this video. All right. Our next thing, as you can see, this photo right here is it's going to be the Freedmen's Bureau. You have white people educating African Americans in the South because, like I said, many of them were not educated. It was against the law. So this organization was made by Congress to help these former slaves to be able to read and write. So it freed them, and then it gave them free education. So that's what the Freedmen's Bureau is. This would happen after the Civil War, which is Reconstruction. So who becomes president when the president dies? So this man right here, his name is Andrew Johnson. So once again, he will become the president of the United States after Lincoln is assassinated. Now, a couple fun facts about this man. He was a Southerner. He did not believe that African Americans should be treated equally. He was kind of a racist. You got to remember, after Lincoln dies, radical Republicans are taking over Congress. So radical Republicans and Andrew Johnson are going to go at it with each other. They can't stand each other because, once again, Andrew Jackson doesn't like slaves, or he doesn't think that black people should be treated equally. And then you have the radical Republicans that are against that. They actually want to help slaves out. So he's going to be probably, I'll tell you right now in a bit. So Lincoln assassination, we talked about this last week. Lincoln speaks about forgiving the South in his second inaugural address. And then Lincoln is shot and killed by John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater. Only 6 days, my bad, I said 5 days, 6 days after the war ended. Now the impact, this is the biggest thing, right? So what's the impact of the assassination? So Vice President Andrew Jackson takes over as president. He is a Southerner and does very little to help former slaves. He doesn't do much to punish the South. And once again, the radical Republicans want to punish the South, but Andrew Johnson doesn't want to because he obviously is a Southerner. I think he's from Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. Radical Republicans take over Congress, and then you got to remember, the ones that impeach the president or fire the president are Congress. So all these radical Republicans in Congress are going to impeach Johnson so they can make laws to help former slaves and punish Southern rebels. So once again, after Lincoln dies, everything goes downhill. So you have radical Republicans and you have Andrew Johnson fighting with each other. And Congress, and the radical Republicans or Congress, they have more power because they're the ones that can impeach the president. So that's what they're going to do. I think he's the first president in American history to ever be impeached at this time. So once again, he will be impeached, he will be fired, and they will have somebody else become president, which will be Ulysses S. Grant will be the next president after Andrew Johnson. All right, moving on. So this question is actually going to be in your exit ticket. So if you're listening to my video and you're seeing it all, you will get this answer correct on my exit ticket. So it says, many historians argue that the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln changed the course of Reconstruction. Which of the following usually cited as an aspect of that change? Well, what happens is that the radical Republicans took over Congress, and that's when everything goes downhill because they don't want to forgive or forget what the South did to them during the Civil War. So letter F or letter A will be the correct answer here. Moving on. So this is what the aftermath looks like in the South. You have the South. This is like a little factory that's obviously made in the South. They don't have that many factories in the South, but they did have like a handful of them. And this one's destroyed. So the Union destroyed it. Maybe Sherman's march destroyed this factory, so the South can run out of supplies. So as you can see, this is what it looks like. The railroads, I told you that Mr. Sherman would destroy the railroad tracks so they wouldn't use the railroads to transport goods. So once again, all the railroads are destroyed. They're all piled up. And as you can see the background, there's like dirt everywhere, like things being destroyed. The buildings are destroyed behind it. So once again, that's the aftermath of the Civil War in the South. You can see also more carts and wagons are being destroyed. A house or a building right there was burned to the ground. It might have been a factory that could have helped the South. It could have been food they were making there or some type of farm. So once again, this is the aftermath. And by doing this, this will make the Civil War come to an end immediately. Now, my next question, so you guys can get this right, what is Delgado's favorite number? My favorite number is number 5. I've always loved number 5 since I was a kid, so that's another question you guys can get right. All right, moving on. Last part before we finish up our lesson. So 1865, need to rebuild the nation. Reconstruction era is from 1865 to 1877. I already told you that. Radical Republicans controlled Congress. They sent soldiers to the South. Remember, they're going to send soldiers to protect these African Americans and to enforce the laws, all right, which is the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. If there's no soldiers, the South's not going to listen to them. So once again, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And then the military leaves the South and Reconstruction ends, all right? So once the soldiers leave, that's when everything goes downhill because the South can do whatever the hell they want, which we'll talk more about tomorrow, though. All right, and then I have another question for you so you guys can get it right. There's 2 questions. So what is Delgado's favorite basketball team? Delgado's favorite basketball team is going to be the San Antonio Spurs. And then which country is my favorite country to visit? It's going to be Italy. Italy is my favorite country to visit. So once again, if you saw my video and you obviously listened throughout the whole video, you got questions correct, or you can get these simple questions correct on your exit ticket. All right, thank you guys. See you guys soon.